Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 7:00 p.m. This is the regular monthly board meeting being held on August 20th, 2020. We have a quorum with all members present except for Ms. Williams. Please join me in a moment of silence in observance as you feel appropriate. I also want to take a moment to remember the Williams family and send our thoughts and prayers to them during this difficult time. Okay. If you will stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Please be seated. Dr. Randall, are there any introductions?
Yes, Madam President. We do have some introductions for you tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Tonight I'd like to introduce you to our two new high school assistant principals. First, we have Wendy Bradford, who is an assistant principal at Fulshire High School. Wendy is a May 2008 graduate of the University of Houston with a bachelor's degree in psychology. She received her master's in 2013 in education administration from Lamar University. She has 12 years of experience in education, including 7 years of teaching, 4 years as an art specialist, and 1 year as an instructional facilitator. And of course, Wendy has already started in her role. Congratulations.
Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Next, we have the B.F. Terry High School new assistant principal, Daryl Ross. Daryl is a May 1988 graduate of Ouachita Baptist University. We tried that. I still got it wrong. Ouachita Baptist University with a bachelor's degree in physical education. He received a master's degree in 2005 in the art of teaching from Marygrove College. He has 30 years of experience in education, including 13 years of administrative experience. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. It is. Let's see. Ms. Bosick, are there any public comments?
Yes. If you wish to address the board, you must fill out a card and submit before the presiding officer calls the meeting to order. While speakers generally have 5 minutes to address the board, the presiding officer may establish an overall time limit for public comment and adjust the time allotted to each speaker when necessary to accommodate a large number of speakers. However, no speaker shall be given less than 1 minute. While the board values hearing from members of the public, trustees may not respond to comments as they are prohibited by law from discussing or deciding any subject that is not on the board's publicly noticed agenda. Speakers having complaints against individual district employees or trustees may only address the board after filing a complaint form in the manner provided for in applicable board policy, DGBA for employee complaints, FNG for student and parent complaints, and GF for public complaints. The presiding officer or designee shall determine whether a speaker has filed a complaint according to policy. Any speakers who complain of individual district employees or trustees during public comment will be directed by the presiding officer to stop addressing the board and will refer the speaker to the appropriate complaint policy. As you come forward, please state your name and your address when you come forward. And our first speaker is Isaiah Felix.
Good evening, board members. My name is Isaiah Felix. My address is 8806 Luray Court, and this is regarding high school rezoning. I'm speaking here tonight as a resident, a father of four, three of which are in three different schools, elementary, middle school, and high school. I'm speaking as a pastor and as an advocate to those who are treated unjustly. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of my family and my community. I'm asking you as a public servant to all LCISD students, families, and residents to reject the current ABC Committee rezoning map recommendation. I plead that you uphold your sworn commitment of impartiality as a board member and consider the best interest of all students and not a particular agenda. It is with great disappointment that I express my personal sentiments that the process of finalizing this recommendation has been flawed and should by default be considered invalid. Please make a choice that considers all students in the rezoning lines, which are now being represented by a map that is not only segregate, but does not truly represent what our district is, diverse. Please serve the public and not a specific group of people or communities. Please give the opportunity for our voices to be heard by you, since they were clearly ignored by the ABC Committee. I ask that you take swift and decisive actions on these concerns, not wavering in the independent and unbiased character that your service holds to our communities. In the environment of social divide that we are experiencing in our country, I have been so proud of the way that our community has embraced each other and has denounced it ever so prevalently. Our communities across LCISD are clear examples to many others of what diversity should look like. After realizing how much we have at stake in these last few days, it is without question that I affirm that there are some things that are more important than life than sports. Please do not fold to an egregious map 20 that lost twice to a much superior map 2 that won twice in the final voting that was based on data. The public had an opportunity to voice their concerns, and we most certainly did. The louder we spoke, the deeper the divide that was based on biases against a community such as Bombrook Plantation, or also called the Bombrook Mafia by some committee members. A community that, who although should stay zoned to George Ranch due proximity, elementary feeder patterns, and diversity in ethnicity became the target of specific exclusion and gerrymandering. Some committee members blocked emails from residents and openly communicated on social media platforms to ask residents to stop sending so many emails, even though emailing concerns was recommended by the board. Believing in the process was encouraged, yet now we are here with a map that does not support any of the 12 objectives provided by the board, a map that was voted on and lost twice, a map that won the third time after modifications were done with no data or numbers, a map that was voted on based on biases against the community and hopes of sports advantages, a map that overutilizes Randall, a lower income school, and underutilizes George Ranch, a higher income school. A map that undermines a tremendous amount of traffic and endangerment.
Your time's up. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jason Kalunga.
So, my name is Jason Kalunga, 8415 Cloverleaf. I'm coming from you from an area that's not zoned to George Ranch and not going to be zoned to George Ranch, and I am okay with that. I have accepted it. What I'm not accepted is the fact that Randall is going to be overutilized like the previous speaker was talking about. Your mission statement says that we are going to inspire and educate through leadership. I need y'all's leadership to understand that the map that was chosen was not the right map. The map that was chosen was done in the late night. The map that was chosen was done as a Hail Mary pass, and it actually passed. It's unacceptable. Just like the speaker before spoke about the demographics, it is very biased to have George Ranch at the level it's at, and the fact that the economic disadvantage and the diversity that it is. My recommendation is map 2. If you do have to keep George Ranch at a certain level, I don't recommend sports being over education. However, I understand that sports does generate income. So if you feel that George Ranch has to be at that lower level because of becoming 5A, do map 1. It was from the demographicers. It was before ABC committee had their chance to put their hands in it. My concern is that the ABC committee went ahead and went with their own agenda. They figured out a way to allow for certain areas that they want to go to George Ranch, a rated 9 school. They're going to have this brand new Randall school. Our kids are not going to have the student to teacher ratio needed to be successful. The school is going to fail before it's able to. The map that was picked before before the public input had LCISD at 8 years of overcrowding amongst all through 4 schools. Now the map has 11 years of overcrowding at the 4 locations. How do we go from a public input meeting that was saying, hey, we need to allow George Ranch to get utilized to its full advantage to, hey, let's go ahead and put more students at Randall. Let's figure out a way to put more students at Lamar. That's unacceptable, and y'all have to make the decision and say, you know what, this was done incorrectly. Let's bring out a new map. Use map 1 if it's what's right because it's what the third-party company said, or use map 2 because it was approved twice. I understand that if you have to keep it at 5A numbers, use map 1. But if that is not, if sports has nothing to do with it, and you'll have to ask, you're looking in the mirror and say sports has nothing to do with it, then map 2 is the winner, and it should be the winner, and that's the one y'all should vote on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Smith.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Randall. My name is Linda Smith, and I am the president of Lamar ATPE, Association of Texas Professional Educators, the local unit for the Association of Texas Professional Educators, the largest community of educators in Texas. We as ATPE are deeply concerned about the health and safety of the state's students and educators, as well as the potential for widespread disruption to the instructional environment during the 2021 school year. ATPE developed a list of recommendations urging school districts to implement in response to COVID-19. The recommendations are drawn from concerns expressed by our membership through surveys, emails, and requests for legal representation. The following recommendations were shared with all Texas superintendents on August the 12th. The first one, implement an orderly and objective process to solicit and consider individual staff health concerns to make the most appropriate accommodations, including staff assignments, consistent with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Number 2, grant a requested contract release or refrain from pursuing a complaint with the State Board for Educator Certification if a staff member employed under contract resigns solely due to a health concern that cannot be accommodated in a way that ensures the staff member's health or the health of an at-risk family member. Number 3, provide paid administrative leave for any staff member ordered to quarantine because of a work-related exposure or suspected exposure to COVID-19, or implement a sick leave bank or sick leave pool specific to the needs of staff ordered to quarantine because of a work-related exposure or suspected exposure of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Todd.
Good evening, and thank you for your time tonight. My name is Stephanie Todd, and my address is 1114 Aqua Vista Lane. Recently, the final recommendation for the attendance boundaries from the ABC for rezoning of the Wright Randall schools was published. I'm here tonight to share my concerns regarding this map's ability to meet Objective 7, which states to consider students' proximity to a campus being mindful of traffic patterns that allow for the safest routes available. According to OSHA, every 12 minutes, someone dies in a motor vehicle crash. Every 10 seconds, an injury occurs, and every 5 seconds, a crash occurs, which leads me to commend the committee for considering this a key objective for the attendance boundary decision based strongly on the safety and well-being of our students, faculty, and the community. The 2 main reasons why the proximity to campus and traffic patterns are extremely important include safety and effective utilization of money and resources. According to OSHA, also, motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death and injury for all ages. We must justify every additional mile driven, as any increase is at the cost of the safety of our students, faculty, and community members. The road infrastructure for the existing schools has been updated to accommodate more traffic. However, Randall is being built at a location with only 2-lane roads, and most of the traffic will travel southwest on 2977. According to the Texas Department of Transportation, construction for the widening of the two-lane road is still under environmental assessment and will not begin until 2025. The recommended map will result in overutilization of Randall by 2023 and will be critically overcrowded by 2025. Assuming construction starts in 2025, there will be several years that Randall will become increasingly overutilized, resulting in additional traffic and less safety for those affected. My second point is regarding the effective use of money and resources, which also relates to another objective, to consider the fiscal impact of changes. More miles traveled can be directly correlated to an increase in fiscal impact. The buses will be traveling longer, be less efficient, there's more maintenance. This will also result in increased financial impact for families. Not every child is a bus rider. MAP 20 creates an additional 2.7 miles for families, dropping an elementary student off at Carter and then going to Wright Randall, or 2.1 miles for Beasley to Randall. I believe that the district could better utilize these tax dollars received more effectively on education rather than transportation. As you noted, or somebody else noted, the committee voted on a map that was not the top selected map. I would like to advocate for MAP 2 or the committee map, as these will better meet the objectives of the committee. They will also better provide for better traffic safety, reduced resources and costs, and time. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephenhurst.
Hi, I'm Stephenhurst, 9418 Gidgerstone Court. Thank you for allowing public input for this meeting. I just want to make sure the board does not blindly vote on the committee recommendation. One board member said via email that it would be difficult for him to vote against the committee recommendation. That being said, please note that the committee member responsible for the map sent a follow-up email at the conclusion of the committee vote that stated, "I am the committee member who made the recommendation that led to the final approved map, which I now question after having seen the numbers. Had I seen the numbers prior to today, there is likely a possibility that I would have voted against my own recommendation." Many other committee members voiced their concerns as well. Also, the map that won did not have the highest number of votes. The map previous had a vote of 56% that was not passed. The map that did pass only received 55% of the vote. I think there is enough reason to question the map recommended by the committee, also because there was no data at the time they took the vote. If the committee does not support their recommendation, you should be compelled to also not support their recommendation. The number one objective in the master planning principle was to maximize enrollment. The map does not maximize enrollment. The number 6 objective was to minimize the alteration of high school zones. This map also does not support that. I'm from Bondbrook Plantation, and I support keeping the Carter Elementary kids together. My kids have spent a lot of time with their friends here at the end of the summer, and they're all deeply concerned about being split apart. These kids have been together since they were in kindergarten, and my son's now entering the 7th grade. He's, they're really concerned about not being together. There's no real logical reason that we have to split these kids apart. The neighborhood is closer. The roads, they support traveling towards George Ranch. Sending all of this traffic up Reading Road is only going to back up the other neighborhoods that are going to need access to that road to get to Randall. Also, there's only one left turn lane from Reading to Mennonite Road. You're going to have an entire other neighborhood traveling up that road to make that left turn. There's just really not a good reason to support that. It was my kids and his friends that compelled me to come up here tonight and really focus on the number 6 principle, which was to keep these kids together. So my kids asked me
Sir.
the question.
You're out of time.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
that's the question my kids asked. Why can't they be together?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Robach.
My name is Jessica Robach, and I live at 203 Auburn Shores Court. I would like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak this evening. I would like to address the rezoning maps being put forward by the ABC. Drawing zoning lines for a new school in a community can be a hot-button issue, and for many people, it can be quite emotional. To that end, I asked myself if we could remove that emotion and use the zoning objectives set forth by the district to make a data-driven decision about the various maps that were considered by the committee. I worked with my husband and another resident to quantify each map's ability to satisfy these objectives. We shared our work with the ABC committee prior to their final vote, and we were pleased that a majority of them voted for the map best supported by the data, and then again for a modification of that map. This map was known as Map 2, but from there the process broke down. The district's objectives are clear, yet the final map published online satisfies none of these objectives. Prior to this meeting, this board received an email containing a data-driven summary comparing all of the maps voted on at the final meeting. This analysis shows that of the maps considered, some have clear advantages over others in balancing the district's goals. The district values keeping neighborhoods and feeder schools tracking together. Map 2 and its modification best satisfy this objective, keeping the most schools tracking together. The district attempts to minimize rezoning neighborhoods which have been previously rezoned. Out of 20 neighborhoods subject to rezoning at the elementary level in 2018 and 2019, 16 of them ended up rezoned to new elementary schools. Map 2 and its modification affect the fewest of these students, while the final map will rezone almost twice the number of those students rezoned in the past 2 years. In the worst cases, the final map and its predecessors will have some students attending 6 different schools in 6 years. Another criterion set forth is to consider students' proximity to campus, being mindful of traffic and safety. Map 2 and its modification impose the least travel on our students. In the case of the final map and the initial map, 1,200 miles a day less. As a vibrant and diverse district, school zones should reflect the diversity of the district. Even with some of the major changes between the maps, the effect on diversity was small. When deviations from the district percentages were examined, the differences were not statistically significant. As a taxpayer, I appreciate that the district attempts to draw boundaries that best utilize our facilities. Compared to other maps, Map 2 best utilizes these facilities and also burdens the fewest economically disadvantaged students with placement at an overutilized facility. This was the only place where the modification of Map 2 fell short, though it was not horrible. It also fared better than average in its impacts on economically disadvantaged students. Some claim that overutilizing some of the schools here is okay because they will be relieved by schools in the north, but that is not supported by the demographers' data, which shows that those populations will fill schools in 2025 and a 4th school in 2029. It is my sincere hope for the good of our students the board will examine this final map put forward by the committee and question whether it is really the best balance of objectives set forth by the district. And I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Cornelius Anthony.
My name is Cornelius Anthony. I live at 1507 Mammoth Springs Lane. I come before the board as an employee of LCISD, but most importantly as a concerned parent of 3 children who attend Terry High School. Before I state my concerns, I want to talk briefly tonight about equality versus fairness. When it comes to equality amongst the schools in LCISD, despite people speaking so recklessly about Terry High School at the public input meeting, the district has done a wonderful job of upgrading the facilities and providing Terry High School the resources needed to be successful. I can speak from personal experience that there's nothing subpar about the educational experience a student receives at Terry High School. Any student who is serious about learning will be pushed and prepared academically to succeed at any college in the nation, and my daughter's a living proof of that. My oldest, who is a senior, is number 4 in the class. My second oldest is in the top 25, who is an AB student. My youngest daughter will be an incoming freshman. All of the classes are AP classes, and I know that they're receiving a quality education at Terry because of the 5 that they scored on their AP exams, their SAT scores, as well as the college interest letters, one of them academically, which proves that a quality education is available at Terry High School. Like I stated earlier, a student who is serious about learning will be prepared to thrive at and succeed at any university. From an equality standpoint, our district has given Terry everything it needs to help students achieve the same quality educational experience they will receive from any other school in the district. The concern that I have as a parent, if the current zoning recommendation is improved tonight, is in regard to fairness. Educational experience is equal to every other school in the district. However, the overall high school experience that Terry High School would have to offer not only my daughters but to all children who attend Terry High School is not fair. Here's why I say that. To have a committee member say that had they seen the numbers prior to today, there's likely a possibility that I would have voted against my own recommendation, lets me know that what is recommended is not in the spirit of what this district recognizes and wants to uphold. The current map goes directly against the LCISD master plan principles, such as embracing the neighborhood school concept for elementary schools. Arredondo remains split at 3 high schools, where map 22 eliminated that split and brought it down from 3 to 2. Ethnic balance is a guiding principle. The change from map 22 to the proposed map creates an even larger disparity for Terry High School. Due to Terry High School's location, we're not asking for equality. We're not asking to have numbers like Foster or George Ranch, but a change of even a few percentage points will make a huge difference for Terry High School in balancing out some of the huge disparities that the proposed map offers. The red track has shown so much improvement and is now being pushed backwards with this current recommendation. Terry High School has exhibited...
Sir, I'm sorry, your time's up. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Colonius McNeil.
Hello, my name is Colonius McNeil. I reside at 10526 Cattle Lake Drive. I'm a proud Lamar Consolidated High School graduate, class of '97, and I'm currently an employee of the district. I would like to start off by saying to the people in this district and community, all of which hold different titles and responsibilities, you have been good to me and my family over the years. As I looked amongst the board, it's nice to see familiar faces. One face in particular who helped me and my wife raise a couple of our kids. Really does take a village to raise kids. I personally want to say thank you to the board, members, Dr. Randall, the zoning committee, and all involved who spent a tremendous amount of time and effort trying to get it right. I'm sure it isn't easy, and I can only imagine what goes on behind the scenes, but again, thank you for what you do. But I'm here to speak on behalf of the Red Track as a parent in the community and a current employee. From my understanding, the last rezoning proposal, it looks like Terry High School's population will be 81% Hispanic, 10% Black, 8% white, and 0% in Asian and other with this new proposal, which gives the school, Terry High School, less diversity than it already has. I bring this point up because if we are truly trying to shift the culture and put all students first in our district, we need to make things as fair as possible for Terry High School students and the community level to level the high school experience. We must look at the makeup of the up-to-date proposal option and try our best to avoid decreasing the level of diversity at Terry High School, which is already low. I would love for my kids who attend school on the Red Track to experience a diverse community within the hallways of their campus. I believe having a diverse community within the school is a real representation of what the world really looks like and prepares our students for life outside of Terry High School. Our kids learn from us as parents, mentors, and educators, but I know for a fact from my personal experience in talking with my own kids that our kids also learn from one another through being exposed to everything that comes with the relationships they build and experiences they gain from being around kids and families that come from different backgrounds and economic statuses. Sometimes we learn to appreciate our differences, whether we choose to adopt those differences or not. Sometimes we learn from other people, and I'm telling you right now, the Red Track will never experience this if not given the opportunity. Exposing our students to people and things that help them grow, get them out of their comfort zone. This is the best way to help shift the culture at Terry High School and the feeder schools. Option 22 gives Terry High School the best opportunity, from my understanding, to keep the diversity that it would be losing from the other option. As a person who grew up in this community and had a chance to experience a diverse environment by growing up or going to Lamar Consolidated, I can say with all certainty that it has helped me renew my mindset, and it's helped give me a drive to shift my culture and do things that I never thought was possible for my family. We all learn from each other. To the parents and the surrounding communities that make up LCISD who continue to clash with change.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time's up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Julie Leahy.
Hello, my name is Julie Leahy, and I'm a staff attorney with the Texas Classroom Teachers Association. TCTA is headquartered at 700 Guadalupe, Austin, Texas. TCTA represents approximately 1,000 of your teachers, librarians, counselors, diagnosticians, paraprofessionals, and other instructional employees. I am here tonight to share with you the significant concerns that some of your employees have regarding the district's plan to resume face-to-face instruction with students on Monday. TCTA believes that in-person instruction is the preferred method of instructional delivery. Your teachers love their students. They have missed them tremendously, and they can't wait to see them again. However, we also believe that the only way that this can be accomplished in a way that is truly healthy and conducive to a productive and successful learning environment is if reopening is accomplished in a manner that minimizes the potential to spread COVID-19 in your community. For these reasons, TCTA supports reopening only under the following conditions: that opening dates for the coming school year be based on the recommendations of state and national health professionals, that if and when in-person instruction begins, districts provide accommodations such as remote instruction for home for students and employees who are not comfortable returning to school or performing certain activities, particularly those individuals in a high-risk category or those who live in a household with a high-risk individual, and that districts provide appropriate PPE for all employees and students based on guidance, again, from national and state health experts. Lamar CISD's reopening plan fails to meet any of these criteria. We note that the Director of Health and Human Resources in Fort Bend has informed you that this community is experiencing uncontrolled spread of COVID-19. Despite this, the board has declined to postpone a return to in-person learning. Additionally, after the decision was made to return to in-person instruction, the district modified its guidelines related to how school will be conducted once school opens. Most notably, on August 10th, the district changed the criteria for when a student or employee may return to school after having been diagnosed with COVID-19 or coming into contact with a person diagnosed with COVID-19. It also changed how it defines what close contact means. The definition of close contact is significant because a person who has come into close contact with an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19 will be notified of that fact. Under the modified guidance, a person will be deemed to be in close contact with a COVID-19 positive person if they have been within 6 feet of the person for a cumulative duration of 15 minutes. However, additional factors like whether or not the infectious person and the potential close contact have been consistently and properly masked may be considered. Currently, everyone over 4th grade is going to be required to wear a mask. This means that under the current guidelines, if 10 students in one class of 25 students test positive and the other 15 students have been wearing masks, the district is not required under its guidelines to inform the parents or the staff present in that classroom.
Excuse me,
Yes.
your time's up.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
We hope that you all will reopen in a safe manner
Thank you.
and have a successful school year. Thank you.
Ashley White.
Good evening. My name is Ashley White, and my address is 6206 Cleek Road, Richmond, Texas, 77469. I appreciate you taking the time to hear our words this evening. I know you've got a lot of people on the list, as we've all been divided across multiple rooms, so I know you're going to be busy this evening. So I will make the best use of my 3 minutes possible. I'm here in a red shirt, which should tell you I'm here to advocate for the red track. I am a parent of 4 children who will have gone through LCISD. I am a product of LCISD, and my parents are products of LCISD. I'm a graduate of Terry High School. I've already graduated 2 children from Terry High School. I have 1 still there and 1 heading to Navarro this year as a proud 6th grade ranger. I'm here to not recap all of the data that was hashed and crunched through over weeks and weeks in the zoning committee. That would be impossible in the 2 minutes and 19 seconds I have left. What I can tell you was there was a great deal of thought and effort and a large number of people, not just from the red track, but from across all of LCISD, who considered all of the data, all of the maps, all of the pretty colors, all of the roads, all of the transportation. We looked at all of it over those weeks. And the recommendation that came out prior to the public input meeting was map 22. You'll hear it referenced as map 22 often. That map, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, is the best representation of a map for Randall Wright that will best serve Terry High School. It's easy for us to argue that data can tell you anything you want it to say. Data changes elections, data changes budgets, data changes the valedictorian of a senior class. Ask my daughter who graduated 5th a few months ago. Data changes everything, a few points shy of being number 1 in her class. In this case, we're talking about the data related to kids in LCISD. And a few data points do make a difference when you're talking about Terry High School. When they go from 76% to 81% low SES, it does make a difference. And I plead with you, as you consider these maps this evening, to reconsider map 22 that was presented. Those data points represent children. Those data points represent families. Those data points represent the voices that aren't here to talk to you tonight. You're hearing me, and you're hearing others. And again, I simply ask that you consider what a difference those few data points can make. I'm proud of Terry High School. I'm proud to have been a graduate. I'm proud of what my children have accomplished there. I'm proud of what children will continue to accomplish at Terry High School. And I want to give them the best shot they have. They already start with the highest SES in the LCISD, and by adding 3 or 4 more percentage points to it, you just made the mountain steeper for them to climb. Please consider going back and looking at the map previously approved by the zoning committee and presented at the public input meeting. It would make an enormous difference today, tomorrow, and for the future of Terry High School and all of LCISD. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Reyes.
Hello, my name is Lisa Reyes, address 6727 Wrestling Oaks. I want to start off by saying that I am a product of LCISD as well. I am a graduate of BF Terry. I have 1 son that graduated from BF Terry. I have another that's a senior at BF Terry. And so ultimately, the rezoning of Randall doesn't necessarily affect me. But as a representative of Terry High School, I felt it was my due diligence to do everything in my power to make sure that we did what was best for all of the kids. Red Track has tremendously struggled, but Red Track has also fought the good fight. Our Red Revolution isn't for nothing. We do that because we truly mean that we mean for the best for our kids, and our kids are wonderful. We have great opportunities. I will say, as being on the zoning committee, we worked very hard, and it was a very, very tedious back and forth. We all took things into great consideration. We were very mindful of looking at all of it in a whole and trying our best to do it for the greater good of everyone. And I knew that there was no way possible to have Terry High School look like our Foster or look like our George Ranch or Fulshire. There was no way possible, but I also knew that we could make a few things different that would make a difference for these kids. And it is our job as parents, it is our job as employees and everybody else in this community to make sure that all of our kids have the opportunities that they need and deserve. With MAP 22, it wasn't perfect, but I will tell you this, it did try to balance out the things that happened. It took away a 3-way split for a elementary school that was a big deal. We tried to move some of the zoning to accommodate everybody and try to take into consideration some of our middle class communities that would have greatly impacted Terry High School by what they were losing from Randall, which was inevitable, and we knew that we would lose them. So I think that we have to take all those things into consideration. One thing that I feel is that map 22 was the best map to achieve optimal zoning with what we had to work with without ignoring or rationalizing the data and evidence in order to maintain the comfort of the status quo. And I truly 100% believe that map 22 did it the best of that for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oliver Nguyen.
Good evening. 8822 Mugwort Drive, Bombrook Lakes. Just recently brought my family back to this community. I want to first off look all of you in the eyes and say thank you for what you do. You do not have an easy task. You do not have an easy job. I have family members that have been in education. I have seen the stress that comes down on them when they come home from work. I know that, especially in times like this, it's not easy to make any right decision. So, thank you for trying. I've served my community as a youth minister, as a district executive for the Boy Scouts of America. Now I manage a team of men that are considered essential workers and probably wouldn't be able to be here tonight. You've heard many voices. You've heard the plea of the importance of equality. And if there's anything that you can do now, it's to lead by example. If you believe in equality, if you believe in your mission statement, if you believe in the voices that are part of your community and that care about the children of this community, I think you need to reconsider some decisions. I'm not here to beat you down. I'm here to say thank you. But I think you've heard enough people say we need to provide our children with the best opportunities possible. And with some of the proposals that you have set up, it's not looking too good. I can't speak for every other person that's been here. I can only speak for my family. I'm a stepfather of a daughter that I claim to be mine. She's already been abandoned by one father. We moved our family here because of the relationships that she developed at the church I was serving at in Sugarland. She was excited about the school, Polly Ryan, she was going to be going to because she was building long-term relationships. Your proposal damns that. So I'm not speaking to you as just an upset community person. I'm speaking to you as a father who would do anything for his child because I've already seen the hurt that she has had in the short time on this earth. I will fight tooth and nail. I'll provide. I will speak for the people that can't be here. And again, I will do all that respectfully and asking you to reconsider some of your decisions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. We need to approve the minutes for the June 16th, 2020 board workshop, June 18th, 2020 regular board meeting, June 14th, 2020 special meeting, July 16th, 2020 special meeting, July 16th, 2020 board workshop, July 28th, 2020 special meeting, and August 6th, 2020 special meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, sir?
I would like to propose we amend the August 6th, 2020 minutes.
Yes, sir.
This captures a bit of a discussion that we had in this room on that date, and I wanted to add a little bit more context to what was recorded officially in the minutes. So I am proposing, if we go to page 42 of the board book, second to the last paragraph says, Mr. Welch, being me, asked why the bond committee removed the orchestra room. Continues, Mr. Hunt said it had 67% support, and they had set a threshold at 7. At that meeting, I replied, but yes, the threshold had been changed after the committee had been convened. The original threshold was 75%, I said, and it was changed midstream to down to 7. And I would just simply like that recorded. I'm not 100% on those numbers. I've been led to believe it was 80, then moved to 75. The discussion we had here was about 75 moving down to 70. So there's a 5% difference somewhere. But I would like to amend that paragraph to say, but Mr. Welch responded that the original threshold was 75%.
How do we do that?
He's amending, so he just gets the second, and then you vote on that.
That's my proposal.
Okay, so now we need a second to
His amendment.
your amendment. Do I have a second? Mr. Hunt? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Now it's the amended motion.
Oh, okay, so what?
The amended motion.
The amended motion passes?
No.
Now we gotta vote.
The amendment passed, now we want to do.
Now we have to vote on the motion?
On the amendment, yes, ma'am, the amended motion.
Okay. Okay, so now we are voting on the
Amended motion.
amended motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Second, all opposed? Okay, motion passes.
There we go.
All right, sorry, that one threw me. Okay, are there any board member reports today? Ms. Danzig?
Yes. Even though we're not meeting with our committees, I have a few updates from facilities that I thought I'd like to share. And bear with me, I had cataract surgery yesterday, so I'm still trying to focus. But the bond 2014 Tamron Elementary School was completed and on July 23rd, 2020, and I know it's open, and I drove out there and it's gorgeous. So thank you again to our facilities for another beautiful school. For bond 2017, ALC addition and renovations, phase 1, the administration renovation is complete. Phase 2, 1621 and ALC academics, construction is in progress. The Jane Long Historical Gym renovations, construction is in progress and is on schedule for completion for May 2021. Transportation fuel tank replacement, new system will be operational and underground tanks removed in August of 2020. Terry High School and George Junior High School additions and renovations. First phase of the bleachers and second phase of the parking lot are complete. Third phase is on the August board agenda that we'll be voting on tonight. Lamar Consolidated High School and Lamar Junior High School additions and renovations. The construction is in progress and is on schedule to be complete for August 2021. The multi-campus carpet replacement project is complete. Closeout documents are scheduled for the October board meeting. The multi-campus improvements and HVAC controls upgrades project will be complete by the end of August. Closeout documents are scheduled for the October board meeting. The multi-purpose space and orchestra for the high school and orchestra middle school additions, Westendorf Orchestra construction is in progress. Dr. Thomas E. Randall High School and Harry Wright Junior High School construction is 73% complete. Project's on schedule for schools to open in August 2021. And it's very impressive if anyone's driven by there like I did today. Trailer Stadium press box, interior finishes and ACM panel installation are in progress. Project is scheduled to be complete by the end of August of 2020. And Fletcher Morgan Junior Elementary School construction is in progress and scheduled to be open August 2021. As you can see, next August 2021 is going to be a very busy for a lot of new projects and schools.
Okay, any other reports? Okay, Dr. Randall, do you have a superintendent report?
I do, Madam Chairman. Our teaching and learning department has been working extremely hard, especially our folks in the professional development, area, we had 329 new teachers that virtually participated in new teacher induction. We had 2,689 teachers that attended 344 sessions of professional development that was offered this summer. So our teachers have been already back working hard, as well as our staff in preparing for them. This summer we had summer workouts, and we had 1,023 performing and visual arts students that were here during the summer working out, as well as 2,081 student athletes and 158 coaches attended at least one workout during the 6-week session this summer. So we've already had a lot of activity prior to the beginning of school.
Yes, sir. They've been busy. Okay, at this time, we will establish a consent agenda. The board creates a consent agenda, which are items that the board feels there are no need for further discussion. Okay. 8A1, 8B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6, B7, B8, B9, B10, B11, B12, A, B12B, B12C. We'll pull 13, let's see, yeah, 13A, 13B, B, am I saying that right? Yeah. We'll pull those two. And then we'll, I guess we want to pull B14, yes. B15, B16, B17, B, yes?
Yeah.
B16, if someone has a recommendation, okay. B17, B18, B19, B20, B21, B22, B23, B24, B25, B26, B27, B28, C1, C2, D1, is that it? We don't do information items.
Madam Chairman, I don't think you need to pull B13, we just need to read it. We can approve it.
Okay, so we approve it, we don't need to pull it though, okay, okay, gotcha, so we'll include those. So that's it for that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then do I read off what the consent agenda is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the consent agenda will be 8A1, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6, B7, B8, B9, B10, B11, B12A, B12B, B12C, B13A, B13B, we're not, okay, so B15, B17, B18, B19, B20, B21, B22, B23, B24, B25, B26, B27, B28.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
28. I request to pull it for
Pull.
now.
Okay. Pull that one. So we'll take that one off. C1, C2, and D1. Okay. Let's see. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the
Ms.
consent agenda.
Danziger makes the motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Welch will second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Okay, so let's see, the resolutions, let's see, what did I have? You were gonna read Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Please.
Whereas in the United States, almost 16,000 children under the age of 21 are diagnosed with cancer every year, approximately 1/4 of whom will not survive the disease. And whereas cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among Texas children between infancy and age 19. And whereas an estimated 1,700 children aged 19 and younger in Texas were diagnosed with cancer. And whereas the objective of the Childhood Cancer Awareness Month is to put a spotlight on the types of cancer that largely affect children, survivorship issues that help to raise funds for research and family support. Therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declares September 2020 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Lamar CISD and encourages members of the community to reaffirm their commitment to fighting this terrible disease.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Hunt, if you will read Hispanic Heritage Month, please.
Whereas September 15th is the anniversary of Independence Day for 5 Latin American countries and is celebrated as a major cultural event by Hispanics in this country and across the Americas. And whereas it is appropriate at this time to recognize the rich heritage and the significant contributions to American life by persons of Hispanic ancestry, and whereas schools are in a unique position to share an appreciation of Hispanics among children from all races and backgrounds, and whereas Lamar CISD schools commemorate Hispanic Heritage Month with special activities and observances, therefore the Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declares September 15th through October 15th, 2020 as Hispanic Heritage Month in Lamar CISD and encourages the members of our community to share in the celebration of our diverse American heritage.
Thank you. And I did want to read the donations that we have also on page 122. Let's see, we have Adolphus PTO donated $9,411.16 to purchase picnic tables, trash cans, and a metal sign for Adolphus Elementary School. The Dick's Sporting Goods Foundation donated $5,000 for any and all expenses for K through 12 sports programs at LCISD. And Campbell PTO donated $37,182.71 to purchase a digital marquee and library books for Campbell Elementary School. Okay. So now we will go to
14.
Item 14. What is this? 8B 14.
Madam Chairman, the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve the 2019-2020 Attendance Boundary Committee's recommendation to establish the attendance boundary area of Randall High School and Wright Junior High School for the 2021-22 school year as presented, and I think we have some presentations.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have Miss Annabelle Morales, who is the ABC speaker, and she will go over a presentation, and then she and I will be available for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to start out with, the committee first began meeting June 15, and we started with MAP 1. We reviewed the zoning process, the master plan principles, the timeline. We had the demographers there to explain how they had gotten to the starting map. The committee requested information from the district, and we also performed the first set of group work and created some options. June 22nd, the committee met again, and we were presented with maps 2 through 8, which were the results of the group work from the previous meeting. Again, we performed group work and created more options, as well as reviewing the demographic information that we were provided by the district, which was not present during the very first meeting. July 16, we were provided maps 9 through 24, which were the results of the previous meeting, and we again performed group work, had more discussion, and resumed July 13th. July 13th, we selected map 22. And this was the time that we had the larger group discussion, and the committee finalized the initial recommendation, which was put forth for public input. July 27 was the public input meeting, during which the committee listened to various members of the public, of the community. I believe the total number was 41 persons came forward and provided input during that meeting. The committee met again August 3rd to discuss the input that had been provided in the previous meeting, and it was during that meeting that map 22 was eliminated. The committee voted on a final recommendation to this board. After discussion, the committee voted on the final recommendation, which was based on the various input that was provided in the public input meeting. We discussed maps 2, 9, 1, and 20. There were changes made to maps 2 and 20, and the committee voted on a revised map 2, which was what was provided to you. During that meeting, the committee was provided the option to continue with one additional meeting to have the final data from that map. However, the committee voted against meeting again, and the decision was made to push forward this map without the data. Jesse, I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add.
Good afternoon. I think she covered most of it. That what she's referring to, if you look at the final recommendation, you have the data that a lot of the people are referring to, the projected residents, the final breakdown in ethnicity and SES. These numbers were not available to us with this final recommendation, which is why we said we put forth that we want to meet again so we could have this from the demographers. And the committee did vote to not reconvene.
If there are any questions about the process, happy to answer those at this time.
Any questions?
Are we on a timeline that we have to make this decision?
The board does not have to make this decision
Right
this
now?
evening. Traditionally, we do make the decision at this time as we're starting the brand new school year. However, if you were to look at the ABC timeline, you do see there is a place mark for September if there's not a decision made by the board in August.
I had attended those meetings, three of them, well, the last one especially, and I definitely got the impression everybody was absolutely just tired, and they did not have all that information. And I was curious as to, I think there was about 46, this is just approximate, of the actual parents and the people that were discussing it. And I observed a lot of frustration. And that's just my opinion of it. And if we have till September, I would like to suggest that we re-evaluate this and reconvene with another meeting if possible.
You want another meeting of the committee?
Well, that's what I don't know. Is that up to the committee, or is it up to us to be able to have a meeting of discussion about the two different submissions? Because the last one, like you said, they didn't have all that information.
I think
we're very
as
close.
Mr. Rivera mentioned, you know, when we got to that final meeting, and there was a lot of conversation between the parents and the committee members who were there, the district administration did go to the podium and say, we can have an option where we take this information back to the demographer, we make this maps, and we can come back for an additional meeting. There was not interest in doing that, and just to be clear, the facilitator did poll the committee, and as mentioned, 55% did not want to come back and further the conversation, which is why I think when you look at the agenda item that's put before you, the committee did have consensus on the initial recommendation for the public input meeting. You had over 65% around that area said we feel good about this map and getting some feedback. But I think, as you pointed out, there was not consensus at the final meeting for this recommendation. It was a vote, and 55% of the committee voted for this recommendation.
But I think that now it's in the board's hand. So if you wanted to do something, look at it later, then it would be the board would actually look at it later.
Not the committee again.
Not the committee again.
Not the committee. if we would not hear input from, I was just curious, and I know that we're a district, we take everybody's interest in it, but when it came right down to the nitty-gritty, the elementary schools, there was only about 20, and these are all approximate, parents that actually were going to be living in that area that it's affecting. And then the remainder, let's see, I had like 10, 13, 15 other possible parents that were from Bolshire, or from some other areas that it was not going to affect them.
That made up the committee.
That made up the committee. And I was wondering, since we were right now at 2 maps, it's a shame that we didn't see more of the schools represented that it's actually going to affect. That last meeting, I think I had that, there was 2 from George Ranch, 3 from Lamar High, and I had 0 from Terry. I could very well be wrong. I was just taking what I saw. And so my idea was, how can we get those people to come in to make that final decision?
I think at the end of the
Or
day,
recommendation, I should say.
right, I think at the end of the day, we've had a long-standing history in Lamar CISD having advisory committees, bringing individuals in. And when you look at the LCISD zoning process, which is board approved, we have parent representatives, 3 at the high school, 3 at the junior high, 2 at the middle school, and 2 at the elementary, who are a part of the zoning process. And we know that we zone almost every year for elementary schools, and those are very localized, and it only impacts a small area of the district. When you're looking at your secondary feeder patterns, though, there is an opportunity, based upon the discussions, as you've seen over 24-plus maps from the committee, that any number of parents or any area of the district could be impacted. And so our practice has been to include a representative or representatives from every single campus, elementary, middle, junior high, and high school. Now, at the end of the day, this is an advisory committee that looks at information and meets to bring a recommendation back to the school board. But certainly we can't make the committee members attend every single meeting.
Right, right.
I have several comments, but it's for the board discussion portion, not necessarily this right here, so I don't.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what our role as the board. I don't remember us necessarily saying in the past that we needed to revisit. You know, we pretty well have gone with their recommendations, but this time I think.
Well, we've made changes before, because
Yes.
even with Carter,
That's right.
we added,
Did we
we
do-
added
That's right.
Brazos
Mhm.
Lakes, I believe.
That's right.
Okay.
We've made
To
changes
Carter.
every,
Just with that one.
Yeah.
not major, but we've made changes.
Not anything
every-
major, yeah.
We've made changes,
Okay.
so I think really at this point, we're just at the point that we need to discuss what we think is better. But I think my main question was, I missed, I think, the first 2, so I came in on when they started going to 24, which I think is a lot to consider. But what was the information the committee was given about how Lamar and Terry were kind of getting overcrowded and that would be taken care of? Because it just seems to me Terry, especially Lamar, it's not the same. I mean, that's why we keep our principal for our district to have them at 2,000 or not too much over. And it looks like even with the one the demographer gave us, it gets busy fast. So what was the information that y'all were given about that?
As far as, I'm sorry, can you read?
About the impact of Terry and Lamar on
So, I mean, we were looking, I mean, and speaking just for us, because we were in the same group, and we are actually part of the group that created MAP 2.
Okay.
And so we were looking at the demographics, the population. One of the things that the demographer said to us is to look at trying to keep the populations of the school under that threshold that you just mentioned for at least 4 to 5 years. Because in the meantime, more than likely, the next high school being built would be in the north, which would not affect Randall, George Ranch, maybe Lamar to an extent, or Terry, but not by much, again, depending on where it's at. So it would probably be about, and I believe this is what he said, 8 years before any kind of relief would be provided for the southern half of the district. So were we given the numbers other than what you see as far as population-wise? So we kind of took that into consideration, and we're looking at population, demographics, SES. We realized as a committee, and again, speaking just for us, I can't speak for all 100 and something of the committee members, realize that when we move certain neighborhoods, the racial and SES populations only fluctuated 1 or 2 points. It didn't make a big difference. Population did make some improvements depending on the neighborhoods that we moved. So again,
But I think all of us were shocked when we finally did get the final numbers and saw just how drastic the SES and racial disparities that existed with the final map.
Are you folks, you're here to represent the committee?
yes.
And are you saying that your subcommittee of the bigger committee developed map 2?
Yeah, just by chance, we are the ones that.
And you personally now, I'm asking you as an individual, you would prefer map 20 that came out of the committee recommendation or map 2?
So me personally.
You can speak as a spokesman, you can speak in.
I'll speak in different terms, and I think, I live in a neighborhood that's not affected by either map. I live a mile from the school, so regardless of what map is picked, my sons are gonna go to Randall. So it didn't matter to me one way or the other. I felt, as a parent, looking at the numbers, that I thought map 2, and again, this is how we came up with it, would be better for the district. All the schools. In particular, for me, looking at Terry, I felt that one of the big things that we need to do with Terry is try to reduce the population to be able to help some of the struggling students in that school. That's where I'm an administrator of the high school, so I know the struggles of what that can be like. And knowing that, I felt that it would be better if we reduced the population of Terry. George Ranch will be fine either way. And Randall will be fine either way, I believe. So my personal opinion would have been map 2. The other thing that we looked at, one of the mission statements is reducing the number of students that are moved from school. So if you look at map 2, of all the elementary schools, I believe 5 of the elementary schools, 5 of the elementary schools would be 100% zoned to one high school based on that. So if you look at option 2, Carter, 100% would go to George Ranch, Hutchinson, 100% to Lamar, Smith, 100% to Lamar, and Williams, 100% to George Ranch. The only other one that is not on there is Thomas, which would be 100% to Randall. So that's not on there. Option.
It eliminated the three-way split.
It eliminated and it also eliminated the three-way split at Arizona. So, just as a background, after we mentioned that we had 2 through 8 the first time, when we came back, our group went and looked at what if we eliminated the split at Meyer, and that's what led to the map 9, I believe, which included not splitting up Meyer Elementary. 100% of that one would have gone to Randall, I believe, in map 9. But after looking at it, there was some input and discussion, and it turned out that map would not have made, we didn't think it made much sense. So we looked at things like that. We looked at the population. We looked at, everything we possibly could. Looked at the travel routes. We talked about, we even discussed to the mile how far the people from the Kendleton area would be traveling between moving them to Randall and Lamar. And we asked about the cost and the travel time. And the recommendation from them would be, even though it's about a mile further to Randall, the time would be a little bit longer, but not traveling on 59 as much would probably be safer for us. So things like that were all taken into consideration. when we looked at this, so.
Clarification, when you say that in your personal capacity that you liked option two.
Two.
Are you talking about option two modified, which adds 28A to Lamar, or the original?
The original option two. We looked at, and that was one of the things that came up after the public input meeting, that a lot of the reserve felt that they wanted to stay with Terry, or with Lamar, I mean. And so they were, and again, the whole reason for that was trying to eliminate the three-way split for Arredondo, which what 28, yeah, 20, the modified option two with 28A creates a three-way split.
So where does 28A go to school now?
They are currently at,
Lamar, if I'm not mistaken.
they're at Lamar.
It's the reserve.
Yeah.
Can you explain exactly where the reserve is? Is that over by Town Center?
Yes, it's behind Home Depot.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So
Thank you.
with committee option two,
Get closer to
the modified version that adds 28A back to
Back,
Lamar,
it keeps it at Lamar.
are there any students that would be switching back and forth between Lamar and Terry?
With option two?
In option two,
Option two modified.
Two modified,
That's a good.
I don't.
I clarify.
Oh.
I clarify. So, option two, modified with 28A going back to Lamar, was the final option two version two, discussed at the final meeting. That moves 28A back to Lamar where it currently is. Option two initially moved those students from Lamar to Terry. So in the final discussions, it got down to option two, version two, or option two moving 28A back to Lamar, and they also looked at the final recommendation. So if you were looking at option two and you didn't want to move students between Terry and Lamar, you wanted to keep them where they were, that's why you'd have the 28A go back to Lamar.
two modified.
Yeah, 2.2.
But it doesn't affect the diversity at
That,
Terry.
that was my next question.
It does not?
It does.
It does.
Moving the reserve back to its original location at Lamar is going to reduce the diversity at Terry.
Okay.
It reduces the,
Yeah.
that's what we,
Mhm.
okay.
Okay.
It looks like it's basically identical.
Except for that little
That
bitty neighborhood.
little bitty
That one
area.
neighborhood.
No, the
Diversity.
SES for Terry under committee option two modified and the committee's final recommendation, which I believe is map 20.
It's off by a few percentages.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying a while ago. We could play, and we did, and that's how we ended up with now 26 different options. Moving one neighborhood or another, I mean, it just created just, and I believe kind of going back to what you said, ma'am, at the end, people were getting tired. That, I mean, we could keep going and going, and there was people asking for, well, what if we did this, still at that last meeting, and it could have kept going for a long time.
So I just want to make sure I have it correct. At the last meeting, there was some changes made, but the demographer
Was not
present. So people really didn't know some of what the impact would be,
Correct.
correct? And so, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Because truthfully, when you start looking at it, you do worry that you're overcrowding another school for another school, but you do want to show that you made, the purpose of building Randall High School was to help George Grant. So at the end of the day, you want to do that, but you don't want to upset the apple cart somewhere else.
Exactly. Especially if that school is the one that has the highest low SES students. It's not fair.
At one point, at the beginning, it was two, was it five? And not,
Two,
was five involved in this?
no, ma'am.
No.
2, 1, 9, and
20.
22?
2, 9, 1, and 20.
2, 9, 1, and
22
But
was
then-
the
But
one.
then there were 6 that y'all voted on the week before to
Because
get
y'all
down to 22.
y'all reduced it down to 3.
3.
And then
yes.
they reintroduced 3 other options.
Right.
Because I had missed that meeting, and all of a sudden, this 20 or 22 came in, and I said, what did I miss? Because When I was looking at option, I was thinking it was 5. As far as the elementary schools being split. And option 2, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 elementary schools that would be split.
And the demographers, they had said that they had made that very clear to us at the very beginning, is that there's not a way that you can have 100% feeders.
Okay, that's where my question was
Yeah,
going to be.
and
Why
the-
can't
and-
we, what reason did they give you for that?
I don't remember exactly, but I do remember her saying something about the kind of like the cutoff point where it would make her very uncomfortable, and it was kind of like the 80-20 split. Meaning that if you divide, if you create
If you have a small.
a feeder division, you want it to be no more than 80-20. Because if you make it any higher than that, you're gonna have like, what is it, like 20 kids? When you do the math, 10% of however many kids are in the 5th grade class that are gonna go off by themselves to their 6th grade.
Like Meyer, it was 81. 81-19.
And that goes back to why when we originally did map 2, we said, okay, well, we took that number into consideration. Said, let's see what happens when we put Meyer all in one feeder pattern, which is why map 9 was developed. And I forgot why.
I'm very simplistic, and in my mind, it was like, why are we splitting these elementary schools?
So if you go into your binders, I'm sure you don't want to do that right now, but if you look at the Q&A from the first meeting, we have this conversation with all of our secondary rezoning. And so the actual definition or the term used from our demographer would say, as a fast growth school district, it is highly unlikely that we'll be able to create perfect feeder patterns from elementary to secondary tracks. The recommendation from our demographer is that splitting an elementary school to more than one track is fine and almost always necessary in a high-growth school district as long as you don't create small splinters of students who attend a different secondary track than the rest of their elementary peers. Now, a splinter is defined as less than 10% of the elementary population going to a different middle school other than 90%. Lamar CISD currently has 5 high school feeder patterns, which we all know what those colors are.
So, but this map here, option 2 modified, does have Arredondo at a 3 split.
But it's currently at a 3-way split.
It's
currently
currently.
at a 3-way.
But isn't this the same numbers, kind of?
Originally, it was 2. It was 62 Randall, 38 Terry. On the original one.
On the original
No,
map
but I'm
2.
talking what it is right now.
Right now, it's a 3-way split.
Now it's a 3.
But I mean, are we keeping it close to the same numbers with this 2 as it is right now? Is what I'm asking. No, you don't know.
We'd have to look, I mean, I think we have to realize that we're talking necessarily about the secondary process. That we have an elementary process for our elementary schools as well. And when we zoned for Arredondo, we had the parents only impacted going to Arredondo, and they were very aware, just because of the population density right there in that area, that they would have a 3-way split. And so they brought that recommendation forward. So right now, currently, Arredondo is at a 3-way split. And when you're in a fast growth district, those splits are likely to happen in areas of high population. The key is you don't want to have 95% of kids going to one high school and 5% going to another, because that's too small of a split. The minimum would be 10, and certainly if you can get higher than that, that's even better.
But depending upon the population, it could be 5 kids or 10 kids or 20 kids.
Any more questions?
Not for the presenters, not for the presenters, not for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, yes.
And
Thank
may
you
I
for your
say,
hard work.
I did come to most of them, and bless your hearts.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Yes, sir? Did you
Um,
have something to say?
I went to all the meetings except one. I missed the 3rd one. And my neighborhood is being impacted by all this. I'm in Rivers Run. My neighborhood has gone to George Ranch for 10 years that it's been open. My neighborhood is moving to Wright, Randall. There was a lot of discussion at that last meeting, and it did become a little contentious. There was tension in the air. Someone even at one point went to the microphone and said, "Folks, let's relax a little bit. You know, think about everybody." But that I want to, I'm the one that the speaker earlier tonight quoted, a board member who said, I'm going to have a hard time voting against the committee's recommendation. There's always a but. Here's the but. I do not like the way that process was handled that night. I do not like the way the moderator chose to keep going when he could have stopped just as easily after map 2.2, which is the one we all were just given, was it received 56% of the vote. But he did not, and he kept going. And then later, when they got to the final vote, which is map 20, which got 55% of the vote, he said, well, at some point we got to cut this off. And I think that was a little unfair. And between that vote of map 2 winning and the vote of map 20 winning was actually map 2.2 and map 20.2, because they were both a little bit modification. Between that, there was a lot of speaking that happened, and that's when a lot of the tension came into the room. And that was very unfortunate. I consider myself pretty objective in this because my family is not being impacted directly. My neighborhood is being impacted. My home values are going to go up or down or stay the same. But I'm really looking at this as far as trying to do what's best for the district and balance over a 10-year period, which is what the demographers have given us. What balances the 4 schools as far as total student population? And I really believe map 2.2 does that the best. It's not a perfect map. The reason, let me just give you briefly, moving that one section, 28A, which is the Brazos, the reserve at the Brazos behind Home Depot and Rosenberg, moving that one section, when they polled on that one section, do we want to have map 2 with that one section staying at Lamar High School? It got 71% of the vote. So in other words, at that point, everyone liked map 2, with 71% of the people in the room, the committee members, wanted to say map 2 with the reserve staying at Randall High School. Lamar High School. And that's what this map is, map 2.2.
So map 2.2 is really map 2?
Pretty much.
With modification.
That one neighborhood modified. And that won the highest percentage that night of the vote. That's 56%. Had the moderator cut it off and said, folks, this has been an exhaustive process, let's go home, that would be the recommendation on the table.
And if I correct me, but wasn't 20, they had to modify that by changing Kendleton, because it did not have Kendleton. So they modified that one too.
Map 2 was modified and map 20 was modified, and that was the final vote. So I am recommending, because of the way the final evening was handled by the moderator, that we accept map 2.2.
You making that in the form of a motion, sir?
Well, I'm throwing that out for my fellow board members to see if there's further conversation on all of it.
I agree with him. Map 2 originally, over the whole group, over those 2-3 meetings, everybody was more going into the 2 until the moderator then allowed them to continue on after that vote. And that last night, without having all the information, they made a decision, and I don't think that was right. And two balances, when I look at it, it just seems to, with the elementary schools, the diversion, the ethnicity breakdown, it makes more sense. It's more evenly.
If we take their recommendation, the first year that Randall High School has 4 classes in it, it's going to be maxed out. By the year 2025, it's going to be at the current level that George Ranch High School is at. It's going to have a brand new school within 5 years being over 120%. Doesn't make any sense. The map 2.2 balances overall. It gives a gradual reduction of the student population at George Ranch High School, which is now maxed out, and it slowly reduces it, and it allows growth of the other schools. And one of the big kickers in all that's positive is it keeps Terry High School under its capacity, just a little bit under, which is one of the key themes that kept coming up that night.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. And being that we're really under no urgent rush to approve anything at this point, my idea is that we put some of these versions together that seem to be the more popular ones more of a side-by-side comparison with the actual data instead of having to flip back and forth and looking at handouts and everything else, and having the real results and data in front of us to review before we ultimately make a decision.
Because we'd kind of be making the same decision they made that last night without seeing diversity.
I agree.
Which one do you want to see put together?
Well, I mean,
Those last
obviously,
four?
I mean, if you go back through the notes that I took during
Two.
beginning of the meeting, 2, obviously,
2,
whether
9,
it's
1,
2
and
or
20.
Yeah.
2.2 or 2 improved, and then 20, 22.
What is 20, how is 20 different from 2 modified? Do you know?
Uh,
I think
Do
that's
you
what,
know?
we haven't seen the
We'd have to
final.
see it.
We haven't seen the final 20 until
We haven't seen
tonight.
20?
We didn't have that information.
And this is not just 20, this is 20 modified.
Right.
So it's 2 modified and 20 modified.
Oh, do you know, Mr.
No.
Rockwood?
Yes. Okay.
See,
So-
he's got a stack.
Yeah, I got all the papers here that we want. So just to clarify, the final 4 options that were discussed at the final meeting were option 9, option 22,
20.
option 2, and option 1. And the committee very quickly moved off of option 9 and 2 and focused on options 1 and 2 for the majority of the evening. And so option 22 was the initial public input recommendation that was from, I believe, July 13th.
So tonight I heard I thought I heard people talking about option 20, map 20. Is that wrong?
They meant 22,
Oh, they meant 22.
yes.
Okay.
22 is the one that went to.
22 is the recommendation that went to public input.
But then they took
But
it
they-
back
they
that
scrapped
meeting and scratched it and went to 20, correct? With modifications. Isn't
So-
that what came to us?
If you go into your binders at the end, you can see the charts and the discussion and all the polls that were completed that last night. So after they came out of that public input meeting, and the public input is option 22, then they had discussion around 22, 9, 2, and 1. And then they went from there throughout the evening.
Okay.
Here it is.
So I think, just in reflecting upon the comment here tonight, you see a lot of comments around option 2, version 2, the actual recommendation that the committee voted on that's before you, and then there was some discussion as well around the recommendation for the public input meeting. And so you all have, what I just handed out was option 2, version 2. So the committee never actually saw option 2, version 2, but it's a pretty simple addition to make with numbers, and the committee never saw its final recommendation at the meeting. And as was mentioned, we did ask the committee if they wanted to see the maps and come back, which they neglected to do. So you have the final recommendation, you have option 2.2, and if you went to the very end of your binder, you'd see the final 2 recommendations. So the 713 recommendation would be what they're talking about, option 22.
22, okay.
That's confusing,
So you're saying we'd have all the data tonight that we would have in September if we were just to consider those 2 maps?
You do, and I actually have individual handouts for some of them as well, if you want, not flipping through.
I see all the votes that
Give
were
them,
taken that night back here,
Give them that one.
and.
Thank you.
But you're right, Mr. Welch, that if they had just stopped when they did.
If they had just stopped.
It would have been
And it was
2.
the moderator's
Well,
discretion.
Thank you.
2.2,
Yeah.
2 modified.
So this is,
So we had the 2.
to be clear,
Well, they
which
had
version?
option 2 revised was 56% to 44%, and then they went to 20.
Dr. Rockwood, the handout that they're getting right now is?
So that's the final recommendation.
Which is 24, right?
Which is what, 22?
So that, no,
It's in our board book.
right, it is.
Right
So
here.
the final recommendation is option 20, with 41A and 42B going to Randall. So you have that right in front of you. That is the final recommendation from the committee. And again, that was not a consensus recommendation, that was a final vote, 55 to 45%. You also have option 2, version 2, as Mr. Welch is calling it, which has 28A going to Lamar. And so those were the final 2 under discussion for that evening.
Okay.
If you were interested in looking at some of the other commentary, that would be the recommendation from the public input meeting. But looking strictly at the committee process and the individuals who looked at all this data over several weeks, they went through the process and ended up with option 2 and option 20 with the modifications.
So remind me, at the very beginning of all of this, the 4 maps that the demographer put forward were which maps? There was
At the last meeting?
At the very beginning.
Okay, so at the,
Was there just one?
yes,
Okay.
and I have that one as well.
Then they went to 2 to 8.
Oh, okay.
And then they worked again and went 9 to 24.
Okay.
So I think it just, every time they made one tiny change.
There was a new map. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
But they all worked off of number 1 to begin with.
Correct.
Okay.
So we have, this is the recommended, and this is option 2 revised. So we have both those.
That's correct.
So we can,
And then some individuals who are referencing option 22. We don't have that printed out because that was the committee recommendation for the public input meeting, but it is in your binder, and it is essentially probably the 3rd or 4th last page to the end if you're interested in looking at that one. And that would be the bulk of the options that were discussed this evening.
Okay.
so we have it.
Well, all I know is that when they went to the public input meeting, it was map 22, and then they had the public input meeting, and the first vote they took that night, the last meeting was, do you want to stick with option map 22 or not? And it was overwhelming, no, we do not. So I think the committee themselves, the committee themselves are the ones that said, wait, this is not a good thing going forward.
Right, so to Mr. Welch's point, they came back, they discussed the 41 individuals who spoke at the public input meeting, and they said, okay, you know, you could sense that there was maybe some interest in moving off of that recommendation based upon the public input, and then the committee members brought forward again, option 9, option 2, option 1. And when they voted on those, overwhelmingly, 40% were looking at option 2, 48% were looking at option 1, and 9 and 22 were literally off the table, 2% for option 22, which was the public input recommendation. Then throughout the evening is when they had conversations about different maps and ultimately ended at the option 2, version 2, and the district recommendation.
So can you tell me exactly, because I'm looking at even the numbers back here for the 2 of them, and there's just little tweaks here and there besides the numbers of how fast they're growing, of the impact of different neighborhoods between these 2. What the committee recommended and what 2 revised. They look like they're pretty much the same except for that one area, I guess, that, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that the only thing that's different between the 2?
No, not necessarily. I think that the main thing is from the district's perspective, when you give the attendance boundary committee the charge from the board, it is to redraw boundary lines to open up Randall High School. And certainly, the 2 high schools with overcrowding issues would be George Ranch High School and Terry High School. And so what they're trying to do is create a new boundary map that alleviates the overcrowding at George Ranch, alleviates the overcrowding at Terry, and then opens up Randall High School at a healthy enrollment. And I think that one of the things you might have noticed is that really Foster and Fulshear weren't necessarily a major part of this discussion. And you see, when we had the last rezoning a few years ago when Fulshear opened, Lamar, Terry, and George Ranch really weren't a part of that discussion. And so with the next high school likely being in the north, ideally the district will want to keep looking back and forth in different sections of the district so that you're not reshuffling all the boundaries every time you open up a high school.
Because that's when you lose public trust, when you keep moving kids.
That's correct.
Option 2, the only difference I basically see is that Carter would now be 100% rather than be split.
Well, it's good. That and George Ranch gets bigger faster with, doesn't really take as many kids out as with the recommendation. If you look at the top here, these numbers and these numbers, over the 10 years.
Okay, I'm looking under the ethnicity.
I'm wondering if we need
need to wait till September.
Yeah.
What are we gonna
Yeah.
learn in September? Just having more time to study it? Is that what you?
Yeah, so we do have two options. Either we can someone can make a motion, or we can table this until September, so.
I will make a motion to adopt map option 2 with 28A staying at Lamar.
Okay. Do I have a second to that motion? A second.
My motion was to accept map 2.
With option
2.2.
2.2, 2 modified.
2 months, yes. That was my motion, to accept that as the official one.
So without a motion, we could table it to September.
Would it be detrimental in any way to the timeline to wait until September so we can have some more concise information?
It would not be detrimental if the board wanted to make the decision in September. However, I do think based upon all the associated components of opening up a brand new high school, we've hired the principal, and there's a lot of components of meeting with the students throughout the year, and it's settled before the school year begins next year. Traditionally, we've made the decision no later than September. So it does not have to be made this evening.
But what you're saying is that we're really down to.
We're really down to 2 maps. Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
guess.
Do
2
we have to make a
options.
motion to delay it till September?
Do we have to make a motion?
Is it a-
Yes, you do.
Okay, I want to make a
Well, we
motion
should-
then that we delay our
Table.
decision until.
Table.
Or
Table
table
this
it
item
to September agenda.
September meeting. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
So you Mr. Welch, you were opposed to?
I was opposed to table.
Okay. Let's see, where am I now?
Nominations, number 16, 145, page 145.
Before we move on, can we just see what information we might need?
Yes.
Outline that now?
If
You
any-
mentioned that it would be good to have
Well-
all the information in one place.
I wasn't aware that it was all right here in front of me, and I've got all of it spread out. Now,
So you just want some more time to look it through, kind of?
I do,
Okay.
I do.
Ms. Kaminsky, do you need anything further prepared for you for next month?
I probably will after I look at this.
Okay.
Comparing both.
Okay.
So maybe I'll just call.
You'll let them know?
Yeah.
I do have one question, and I don't know, in option, I guess this is 2.2, the George Ranch actually declines. Do we know what that's attributed to? I guess rarely do we see numbers actually.
My neighborhood goes to George Ranch right
Yeah,
now. It would be.
No, but over time, year over year,
It goes down?
it goes down. And so I was wondering if there was data behind that and why that was actually the case. Because usually we only see that in here is when we add a school, and usually it's right away.
I think what you're seeing for 2021 is a lot of the exception process, which has been outlined in emails to our community. So what happens whenever you open up a brand new high school is that there's a couple of exceptions. One would be a sibling exception. So if you have an upperclassman, if you're going to be a freshman next year or a sophomore and you have an older sibling, you can get a sibling exception to stay at the school. Or if you're a varsity athlete or a varsity extracurricular participant your freshman year, and you would be rezoned to a new high school, you can have an exception to stay at that high school. So just like
It's them graduating out.
correct. So there's a process there, and that's why you see with option 2.2 for the first year it's a little bit higher, and then it starts to lower again.
Put together, just because we have a lot of stuff, and like you, my stuff's spread all over my desk. Put together just the maps, and I'm particularly interested in the SES information, the diversity information, and making sure that we're not overutilizing or underutilizing some of our schools, particularly schools that are either Title I schools now or are going to be Title I schools when they open. For the maps for map 2, map 2.2, map 20, I guess it's 20.1, it's the modified 20.
20.
The one that was recommended?
The committee recommendation.
22.
22.
The committee recommendation is 22?
Mhm.
Okay. So just those 3.
Okay. We can take care of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the committee for all of the work.
We will get it right.
We appreciate it so much. Okay, now we have, let's see, 8B16. So do we need a?
Madam Chairman, this is to ask that the Board of Trustees approve the nomination of, and you had a couple of folks that asked for your support for position 4B on the Texas Association of School Boards Board of Directors.
Any discussion? No.
Okay.
Is there a motion? Do we have a motion or
You don't have to have a motion if you don't have anyone
no
nominated.
discussion? No, nothing. We're done.
All right.
Move
John,
on.
John looks interested.
No, I was,
Okay.
there's 2 candidates listed. These are 2 colleagues in districts in other parts of the city of Houston. And I don't personally know either one of them. I don't know if anybody here
Yeah,
knows
I
either
don't
one of
either.
them. We have some biographical information. They both seem like great individuals. And I wouldn't know how to cast a vote if no one here has a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay.
Next- Next item, Madam Chairman, is
8B28,
we ask that the Board of Trustees approve increasing staff visitor meal prices to $2.75 for breakfast and $4 for lunch during the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I was curious, what is severe need lunch rate? What does that mean for an adult?
So when we do these, this is the reimbursement rate that we get for all of the free children in the district. So it's $3.96. So when we calculate the adult rate, has to be a minimum of $3.96, what we get for a child at the free rate. So we get 2 cents for severe need lunch rate because we are over 40% economically disadvantaged.
Okay, and, silly question, but now with the COVID policy, you don't anticipate visitors coming in to have lunches with their
No,
children,
ma'am.
correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
At least for the first semester.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay.
So I can make a motion.
Okay. Can anyone have a motion?
I can make the motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? No? Okay. Motion carries. Okay, so let's see. This completes the action items. Do we have any questions on any of the information items?
We do have an update on COVID-19.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. As we get ready for school starting on Monday, just wanted to give everybody an update since we last were together. So in terms of instruction, where we are, 19,770 students are enrolled in virtual, or 55%. 15,965 are enrolled on campus, or 45% of our students. Pre-K through 8th grade will have virtual or on-campus sections, but some junior high schools will have concurrent offerings, and that's virtual or on-campus sections in PE, athletics, performing and visual arts, and also in some career and technical education classes. At the high school classes, those will be taught concurrently, again, virtual or on-campus sections due to the complexity of the master schedule and in an effort to reduce class sizes. Canvas will be the common tool utilized in both modes of learning, and teachers in common grade levels or subjects in both modes are expected to plan together and follow the Lamar CISD scope and sequence. In terms of technology, 9,379 or 47% of our virtual students requested a technology device. Students in grades pre-K through 3 will receive an iPad, and students in grades 4 through 12 will receive a laptop, and many of those distribution processes for our campuses began today and will continue tomorrow. The district also compiled a list of low-cost broadband internet offers for families of virtual learners who have some connectivity issues, and that was identified in the commitment card. This information is posted on our website and was also sent out to about 2,000 families via multiple call-outs and emails so that they're aware of the services that are available. In terms of athletics, we are following the UIL COVID risk mitigation guidelines for establishing seating capacity and operating protocols at all of our athletic events, both indoor and outdoor. With limited seating, ticket priority will be given to the parents of the students who are participating in the event, and also video streaming has been set up for many of our high school events this school year. Athletic events will be following many of the same safety precautions for school days and athletic workouts, and these include providing separation between student groups, requiring masks for fans over the age of 10, and promoting social distancing while in lines, and of course watching these events. Child nutrition plans are in place for both on-campus breakfast and lunch service, as well as meals for our virtual students. Cafeterias are configured to accommodate 50% of capacity with distancing in those seats. Virtual students can access a form to order meals for the next week of school, and there are 14 different campuses that will serve as distribution sites each Monday. In terms of hiring over the summer, HR remained busy with 30 administrators, 346 teachers, 116 paraprofessionals, and 30 professional support staff hired in Lamar CISD. In terms of leave information, so since all the staff returned to campuses on August 10th, 5 staff members have tested positive for COVID-19, 1 at each of the following campuses: Frost Elementary, Foster High School, the Adult Transition Program, Lehman Junior High, and Thomas Elementary. Additionally, 2 George Ranch High School students tested positive this week as well. So over the entire summer, from that point up until now, with our more than 5,000 employees, 65 employees have reported a positive COVID diagnosis as of yesterday. Currently, there are 11 Lamar CIS employees who are at home due to COVID-19 diagnosis, and 9 of these are working remotely. 118 employees have utilized the emergency paid sick leave, which is a new type of leave created under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And 1 employee is utilizing the expanded family medical leave, which is also under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. An electronic employee health screening tool was created by HR in concert with our Technology Services Department to provide supervisors with an alert in the event of a positive response and reports for staff who don't complete the survey. So that's something that every single employee has to report every single morning before they actually enter a Lamar CISD facility. And if an employee does not complete that report, which talks about some of the symptoms or pre-screenings of COVID-19, supervisors get an alert of the employees who have not completed that. In terms of PPE and cleaning, we purchased 5,000 16-ounce bottles for hand sanitizer, and these are larger and need to be refilled less often. We've also ordered an additional 3,000 that will allow a second bottle of sanitizer in each classroom. Each classroom has a bucket of wipes, and there's also attic stock of wipes on every campus that can be accessed as necessary for our employees. We've also supplied all teachers, and in fact all employees, with a face shield and 5 cloth washable reusable face masks. And the plan is that every 4 weeks all employees will receive 5 additional washable face masks. So that is a quick overview of some of the things that are occurring. Certainly if the trustees have any questions regarding our return to school guidelines or plans for Monday, myself and members of cabinet are happy to answer any questions at this time.
Yeah, go ahead. Face masks for the younger younger students. Are the teachers going to have the visual where they see their lips?
I have not seen the shield.
Well, in the shield, I'm hearing more and more that they're not considered safe because they're not enclosed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered, are y'all having those masks for the younger children, for the teachers?
So what we're doing.
Have y'all talked about that?
Right, so what we're doing is we're following the TEA guidelines when it comes to facial coverings. And so in Lamar CISD, the paper face mask, the cloth face mask, a neck gaiter, all of these things that cover the nose and mouth are acceptable facial coverings. And according to the latest TEA guidelines, face masks can be used when educationally appropriate or when wearing a face covering such as those I just listed is not feasible. And so there are opportunities for individuals to wear those, which are limited. So if an employee wanted to wear a face shield and not a mask, it would be part of the accommodation process, and they would contact HR. And if a parent were interested in it, what situations would be not feasible to wear a mask, or what would be educationally appropriate for the use of a face shield, which is okay with TEA, they would contact their campus principal.
Okay, so they can't purchase it themselves. They'll have to go through for approval.
Now, you could purchase a face covering yourself. There's just a process either for a student on a campus or an employee if it's okay to wear that.
So what you're saying is that when a teacher comes in, she might have her face mask on, but when she goes to teach a lesson, let's say a phonics lesson, it's a pre-K, K1, 2, she might put the shield on for that lesson, and then when the lesson's over, would put the face mask back on, because they're using it at an appropriate time, not something to take in lieu of. Is that what?
That is a correct example of what might be educationally appropriate.
Okay.
So there are limited examples of when a face shield would be appropriate, i.e. there's a face shield is not an alternative to a face mask in all situations, correct?
Correct. You cannot simply wear a face mask walking into a campus or a facility without either getting an HR accommodation or having a conversation.
Face shield.
Correct, as I wear a face mask. You could not wear a face shield walking into any Lamar CISD facility if you're an employee unless you had an accommodation process or, again, spoke with your principal. And we also talked about, when we look at our guidelines, we talked about there could be very rare and unique situations with individuals who might be immunocompromised or have breathing issues. And so working with physicians, we talked about options for even opting out in rare instances of the facial covering. And so that might be an appropriate time if it worked for that family to wear a face shield. So it's not something that is just wide open for anyone to wear, but there are opportunities where it could be educationally feasible and it might work for different individuals.
People are very confused if students can wear a shield or not.
So I think that's a good point, because we were a little bit confused as well. And so if you go back and, there's been a lot of work that's happened over this summer. And when you go back and you look at the early June input from TEA, the TEA put out guidance that talked about the benefits of face coverings and the benefits of face shields. And they actually said in their guidelines that in many cases, a face shield might be superior. And then they went on to provide us with thousands of face shields and face masks. And then earlier this August is when the update came out from TEA, just again based upon, we talked about pivoting and being flexible, getting information from the health community. They updated those guidelines where it no longer was appropriate. And so we updated our guidelines to align with the Texas Education Agency.
So a child's parents would need to get some sort of special permission to wear a shield versus a mask?
Correct, unless they were enrolled in a course where it would be educationally appropriate, such as the example that Ms. Danziger made.
But they would have to come into the building with their face mask on, go into their educational setting, and then put if that were the appropriate.
Correct, and just like you see many individuals, there's nothing that precludes anyone from wearing both. So you could wear both the mask and the shield at any time.
I think it's just confusing because there's been so much pivoting
Right.
And it's not our fault, it's not anybody's fault, it's just everything keeps getting updated and we want to make.
And they're coming out with these really neat little shields for the kids with all the little characters and everything, and so they're finding out though it's not serving the real purpose. It's not being enclosed to your skin. My other question would be then, if you have parents coming in the elementary school and say, I want mine to wear the mask, will they have that option?
Absolutely. So, we're not requiring it based upon alignment with the governor's order for children in pre-K through third to wear it. But if I'm a parent and I want my child to wear a face covering, all you have to do is let your teacher know and say, I'd like my child to wear that all day long, and they can help accommodate that.
And we're encouraging that as well, because the one thing that we cannot do is keep jumping back and forth and moving around. At some point, we've got to have a direction, and we're consistent with the information that we're sharing with parents and with staff. Because at the end of the day, there's absolutely no way that we're going to be able to say that we're not going to have cases to pop up over the next week or two. It's how we react to those cases that's important. And it's also making sure that everyone in the organization is indeed complying. Because if they do that, then we minimize the opportunity for any type of spread. And so in this building, we've got one way, and in fact, I am the policeman for if somebody goes the other direction. It's important that we follow those guidelines, because this is serious. And we want to make sure that we take care of our staff, and we also want to make sure that we take care of our students. And we may have some issues on the very first day where some folks just don't want to comply. And I can tell you that we're going to hold them to making sure that they are following those guidelines.
Well, I think what I've been kind of frustrated with is some of the public out there keeps hearing, oh, we don't have enough PPE, and I'm thankful for your update, because it's all been delivered to all the schools, so the schools should all have the same PPE. So I don't know where, I don't know. It frustrates me, because I know we're doing it, and I know we're getting it out there, and thank you for reminding us.
Dr. Rockwood, could.
Sir?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the emphasis, and I think I had sent out this notice that I had to, what are y'all doing to acknowledge to the parents, if you are under quarantine, your child should not come to school till that quarantine is finished. I mean, because everybody's going to want to come that first couple of days. Or if you have had them tested for whatever reason the week before, doesn't mean that they should come back to school that first day. That's where I have the kind of concern, because day one, day two, you may have some reports that we've got COVID, but they didn't contract it within those 2 days.
I think it's been.
Have y'all done something like that?
It's been sent out on the campus
Sent out?
level,
I haven't
know.
seen any.
It's been sent out on the
To
campus
emphasize
level.
that to the parents?
Right, and as you mentioned, parents can find all of our guidelines online, both the overarching guidelines and then information in the parent portal. I know as a parent in Lamar CISD, I've received information from my child's principal outlining those expectations for next week, for the first week of school as well.
I've seen on the message boards that I read occasionally, not nightly, that why aren't we following the science? Why aren't we following the medical experts? So could you speak a little bit to, you keep saying we are following TEA guidelines. I think people want to hear you say we're following the Fort Bend County Health Department or the CDC or something. I think I understand the answer. Could you speak to that a little bit?
So the district is following TEA guidelines in terms of all of the safety protocols and the measures that are put in place. And we also talked about earlier the TEA's expectation that at some point for districts to get back to on-campus learning. And so based upon the conversations that we've had over the summer with health authorities, with our parents, using the commitment form, having conversations with the trustees, we've made plans to be prepared to serve our students both virtually and on campus. And as you saw from those numbers, it's about 55-45 that the parents in this community are ready to come back to school in some instances, are satisfied with the protocols that are in place. Others are not comfortable, and that's okay as well. We're going to make sure that for virtual instruction, we provide the same quality education for those parents. And so I think we've always taken the stance of we're listening to our community. Every community is different. We're listening to the input from both our parents, certainly our school board trustees, the medical community, to make these decisions. And we have had many conversations with the Fort Bend County Health Authority, and they've also come and seen what we have in place as well.
So we are following the science, just to let the public, just to reassure the public, because they think they hear we're following the TEA, and they say, well, the TEA aren't medical people. Why are they?
TEA follow the CDC is
That's
probably the
That's what I'm
question.
getting at. They're taking the information from the medical community, and they're making a policy, and they're sending it down to the public school districts, from the way I understand it.
Right,
So we are following medical experts.
And I think, to your point, in different communities, there are different health orders that are in place. So again, you know, the spread of COVID looks different in different parts of Texas than it does in other parts of Texas. So I think the main thing that we're doing is just making sure that we have the appropriate procedures in place for both modalities. And then the main thing, like Dr. Randall mentioned, is on the first week of school next week, is that if we mask up, stay 6 feet apart, follow the protocols, we believe that we'll have a very safe and effective first week of school.
Will the health department be checking our schools periodically? Is that what the plan is, or do you know?
So the health authority.
I know they came out already and checked some, but.
They did. We talked about conversations and communication with the health authority. And so we actually invited individuals with the health authority. Dr. Mentor, who has been here and spoke to the board, epidemiologists came out, and they looked at several campuses in Lamar CISD. They walked the halls, they spoke with the principals, they spoke with teachers, and talked with us about our plan. And so it's obviously a collaborative process in terms of any adjustments that we need to make, or making sure that we're doing all things that are safe for our kids. So at the end of the day, we put plans in place, but we want to make sure we're doing it in a safe and effective way.
Are there plans for Dr. Mentor or somebody from Health and Human Services to come in that first week of school and take a look at how it's working in action?
To my knowledge, at this time, there is not plans for them to be on campus the first week of school, as they would be guests or visitors. But as mentioned, they have been on our schools this week.
But they also, we're required to designate a person who reports directly to them any positive cases that we have. So we have a contact person.
One of the things that you mentioned in your presentation was teachers teaching concurrently. How widespread is that, and how does that look in practice?
I'll let Dr. Mossage speak specifically to that question.
Pre-K through 8th grade for the majority, as we came to the board a couple of months ago, that our idea was that obviously we would have virtual, and we would have virtual teachers and then on campus. And so in the virtual, obviously it's going to be through the Canvas system and our LMS system, the asynchronous kind of model. In some of the 8th grade classes, particularly when you look at CTE and you start looking at PE and some of those kind of outlier classes and electives, they are going to be teaching concurrently, meaning they will have a model of at the same time, an asynchronous model as well as synchronous. When we looked at the kind of going back to the high school, we had to do a recent shift with high schools. And I'm going to kind of break down on how that happened. Is that many of you guys know that 2 weeks we were provided at the high school level. Our final schedules, or the virtual versus on campus, needed to be done by that Monday, August 10th. And so we spent the first few days of that week ensuring that we were following up with parents to ensure that those that hadn't contacted us, so we could make sure that we heard the voice. As the principals and the associates began to make the necessary schedule according to those on campus and not on campus, what we saw was a rising class size. And so one of the first things that we did is that we started to break down that process to say, okay, can we do CTE and PE and some of those other classes? and move those down to concurrently, but keep our core kind of looking at either virtual and or the other. What happened is we still had a significant number in the classrooms in the high school level because we had the overwhelming support. Majority of our school district is requiring, it's 45% and higher at on-campus. And one of the things that TEA came up with on the 10th was that as high schools began to look, because I think this, my personal opinion, they started seeing the high school numbers. And so that when a kid, that we had the ability to make some shifts within that. And so based upon the health and safety of our staff and our students, when we started seeing 30 in a class, we knew that we had to pivot because that would not be acceptable coming in. And so in unison, and again, we tried to we broke this down on Saturday. We worked all day Saturday with our principals and associates and into the day on Sunday. And at about 2 o'clock on Sunday, we knew that we had to make a final decision for the health and safety of our kids and for our staff. And so what is going to happen with that is that you're going to have a concurrent model, meaning they're going to do asynchronous and they're going to do synchronize. So you will have on-campus and virtual. So a lot of the different schools are doing it very differently to some extent. One of the things that TEA said that we could do was do a half day or a half day. So either way to lower those class sizes. But one of the things that we knew, either way, they would be doing asynchronous in the teachers. And most of the high school teachers in the schedules were teaching both modes. They were teaching sections of virtual and sections of on-campus. So we knew that for a majority, we were not, the learning curve would be lower, okay? And so when you look at it, you might have on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, this is one of the samples. Me as a teacher, I have my virtual kids on a Zoom, but I also have my on-campus as a Zoom. And I'm providing direct teach to both modalities. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as teachers are in the on-campus environment, those kids are working independently through the Canvas system, also asynchronous. Then that teacher is also able to communicate with those virtual kids to provide the additional assistance. And as the committees of teachers, meaning Algebra 1, let's use this as a high school example. Algebra 1 teachers, there might be one in algebra that has the ability that is really, really good in technology, and one not so. But in the learning process or the planning process, that they're all utilizing that same Canvas modality. The other positive of this is that what TEA published late Thursday night is that if a child is absent from campus, they're coming to on campus, and you're not there for your attendance, but they complete the asynchronous work by 11:59 that night, they can still be converted to present. And so it behooved us from an attendance perspective and from an instructional perspective and from a health and safety perspective to make that shift. So our campuses, our associates, and our principals, we had a significant number of PD. We know it's going to be a transition. They've had the virtual training, the 2 hours and then the 6 hours. And then our digital learning team and our professional development team are providing the supports that are necessary to help support us as we transition. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Hunt? I might have taken a long kind of explanation on this. Let me break it down, is that when you looked at the classes, the bottom line is that we had 30 in a class. And we knew that wasn't acceptable. We knew that that was not the way we wanted to open schools. And so we had to look at what way could we serve our community and protect the health and safety of our kids, still listen to our community, and serve them at the highest academic level we possibly can. And we feel like we've been able to do that with this model.
I guess what, and I appreciate that, what I'm still confused about is it's first period, Bio 1. There are students that are in the classroom, say there's 20 students in the classroom, and then there's also virtual students that same class period?
Yes, sir. But the class sizes, when we did make that shift on Sunday, the classes went from 30 to where your on-campus numbers went down to between 15 and 20.
So in that first period class, teacher gets up, starts to do like introduction of new material, maybe is doing a lecture or something like that. Students in the classroom are, they're getting the benefit of seeing that lecture. What are the students that are learning remotely seeing, and is the teacher having to do double duty in providing a different way of introducing that new material to the set of virtual students, or are there procedures in place where the teacher could maybe record the first period lecture or something like that for the virtual students?
What we heard overwhelmingly from our associates and our high school principals is to provide our teachers a choice. And so, yes, absolutely. And so what you might have a model with some campuses is where the on-campus direct instruction is happening, meaning with the on-campus kids on Monday, but the virtual kids are working asynchronously. And then you flip it to that Tuesday. And then the asynchronous kids are getting, the virtual kids are getting the teacher direct, as the teachers are, as the kids on campus are working through the activities from the lesson they had the day before. And it's the idea of a flipped classroom where you provide a lecture on a video, but in a class time it is flipped where they're working on activities. And so both of those examples could be utilized. Do you want to add to this? Okay.
I guess I'm trying to, all the students that want to be face-to-face will be on campus, but you're utilizing one teacher to do both, so you have more teachers, so you can split those kids up into smaller classrooms. Is that what you're trying to
Yes,
say?
ma'am.
Okay, now I understand, because I thought maybe you were saying, okay, you are going to go home today. So.
No, and again, in a perfect world, we hoped to be able to move to just virtual and to on campus. But as we have always said, we would continue to look at the data, we continue to look at local and health authorities, and we had to make an adjustment, and we feel strong in the support that we can provide, and our principals feel, and our counselors feel, from what we could see, and our teachers had a lot of support in the direction that we were moving. Not that everyone was happy, but I can tell you feeling a lot better without a high number of kids in a class.
We do too.
So does that mean that high school students, the rule that you mentioned that TEA came out with, that if they complete the work online, even though they're absent on campus, does that mean that a student could then move from on campus to virtual at some point during the grading period?
No, we're still, because you're going to have a schedule. We can't have, particularly remember in pre-K through 8th grade, you still have two different modalities occurring. And so the grading period will either be 6 weeks, 2 weeks before that, where they have to make the decision, a 6-week period, and then at the 7th week at elementary. And that would be the same thing for high school as well at the 4-week of the 6-week period. What we're saying is that if a kid is not present throughout the system, the state is allowing for, if they complete the asynchronous work on Canvas, which enables us to continue to progress monitor, because that is also an important expectation from TEA, is to monitor how our kids are performing and how they are learning. And through the Canvas modality, we're going to be able to do that, particularly for our special populations.
If a child,
Is there going to be a limit on how many times they can use that?
We have not set a limit because, again, we have provided a choice. And so from the aspect, we have just provided our community a choice. And obviously, we're going to continue to evaluate that and continue to look at data and then beginning to have any conversations if something like that were to occur. But right now, we're going to stick with the grading periods, and that's what TEA has asked us to do.
so if a child had to quarantine
Mm-hmm.
and was face-to-face, they at that point could do the virtual so they could keep up, or?
They're all going to be learning through the modality of the Canvas system. So you might not go into the virtual world in pre-K through 8th to that virtual teacher. But if I have you on campus as a child at home, you're going to be able to work through that Canvas system and still not miss out on learning. Because both modalities, on campus and or virtual, will be learning through the Canvas LMS system.
Well, you know, like they call in sick.
I know.
I can't come to school today.
For pre-K, for elementary, if a student is on campus and they have to quarantine, and they have an on-campus teacher, but they have to quarantine and they have to move to virtual, they then switch to a virtual teacher during their quarantine?
To begin with, probably not, because that could be a very limited time of quarantine depending upon when the diagnosis comes in. And so it would be with that particular teacher, kind of like when a teacher in a normal way would provide work to a kid who is absent for an extended time. That would be what we would do at first. And then if it extends time, then we could shift them at that point on a case-by-case basis if need be, if it got extensive. And that's what we do with just even in a normal year.
I have a question. So I've heard, one concern that I've heard from teachers is that they have high expectations for themselves. We have high expectations for our students, and there's a lot of benchmarks that they need to meet throughout the year. And they're concerned with, you know, at the beginning of the year, for any grade, it takes a lot of time to get classroom management and get procedures down, things like that. It's going to take even longer than it typically would. Some of those teachers, and I think rightfully so, I get it, they're concerned, you know, if there's a challenge between safety and making sure that my students know all the procedures that they need to keep safe versus these benchmarks, what am I going to do? What's your response to that?
One of the things that we know, both at all levels, is that with the policies and the processes, all of those are going to have to be practiced and practiced and practiced. We also know that our kids have not been in school for 6 months. And so there's two things that are happening, is confirmation of our processes and procedures and making sure that they clearly understand the expectations. But the other part of that is the social and emotional portion of our kids in the reentry. So to answer your question is that we realize from a curriculum standpoint that there's going to be a time we're not going to begin learning, let's say, our ABCs, just for a very, probably, you know, until a couple of weeks to the third week, because there's a lot of things that we need to establish with our kids, the expectations, but also building relationships with the kids, particularly as they re-enter a school system or a school, whether they're in the virtual environment or whether they're in on campus. We're going to show some discretion, and again, we are, as we continue, I think communication between our campuses is very important as we continue to evaluate where we can move forward, where we need to pull back. And we realize that these are very challenging times, and they're unheard of times. They're unprecedented. But we are committed to doing the pivot when we need to pivot and making the adjustments as necessary.
Any more questions?
I have some questions, but maybe it's Mr. Rockwood. How much contact have you had with any of the early learning centers in the area for those that are having to keep the children that are online, the virtual?
That'll be Dr. Mossage again.
Okay. Oh, okay. I mean, we in the early learning centers, there's a lot in that community that are calling me and saying, you know, we've got 10 kids. Parents are going to work and they want us to do this. What kind of contact are you having with them?
We recently sent out a letter inviting all of the early learning centers that serve our after-school programs throughout the district. Information about our Parent and Guardian Canvas 101. We had approximately 500 parents come to that event, or participants, right? And so from that aspect, that is also going to be posted online, that it can be recorded. And so we've provided that information. What I would suggest is that they contact myself or our offices here, and then we could provide them direction on how that they can access that as well.
Are there any arrangements to follow up as to how they're doing it, if they're doing it correctly, being a facilitator for this?
I think that our philosophy is that we want to be good community partners. And so, again, we're going to try to provide as much information as possible. If an early learning center needs assistance in that, we would encourage them to contact us, and then we can determine how we can support them as they're supporting our kids.
But there are no plans to go out and hold those centers accountable?
Accountable,
or anything
okay.
like that?
No.
Well, I mean, we'll hold them accountable ourselves, but, and I don't know if this is for you or not, but the after-school programs that we used to have on the campuses are no longer. My understanding is maybe 2, maybe 3. Their protocol is going to have to match the school districts, the CDC, and their licensing. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Will there be a possibility after that 9 weeks where I really anticipate a lot of parents are going to go back to school or send their kids back to school? Will those after-school programs be allowed to start up then?
I believe, yes. I think that we're not canceling any of the, I can't speak for Miss Ludwig, but I believe we've talked about this from a contract standpoint. Yeah, no, we're going to be working with them.
As long as the protocol is what our policies are.
Some of the daycares have contacted us, and we did, and, well, we've spoken with some, but not all of them.
Okay.
And we are gonna allow them to start later if they need to, because there are a lot that aren't getting the participation that they've had in the past. And so we're trying to work with them within their contracts.
Okay. And then I have one last question, I promise y'all. Lunches. I've had some calls from parents, and I understood that lunches were going to be, I don't know where I got this, they were going to be delivered to the classrooms? That's not correct?
That is not correct. It's a grab and go, so they'll go through the line, grab their lunch, and then type in their numbers.
Is that even for high school and stuff?
For high school
Will they
as
be
well.
eating in the cafeteria, or where will they be?
Multiple places, like
Okay.
depending on the enrollment of the campus.
Okay.
Like at the high school, it's in the cafeteria, sometimes in the auditorium, sometimes in the
They're
gym.
gonna spread them out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it are they assigned an area to eat? Or
I don't have an exact answer to that.
In giving guidance to our principals, one of the things, especially at the secondary level, that we've encouraged them to do for on-campus students is that first or second day, the students, let them sit. We'll have seats that are
Marked.
yes or seats that are a
that's
no.
good. That's good.
And once they pick that and select that seat for their lunch period, then they're going to come around and do a seating chart and expect
okay.
them to sit in that every day. So we give the kids the choice of where to sit, and then we kind of lock
Then
them into a
that's it.
seating chart after that.
So they better know that. Then the other question is, because this is from my grandchildren, we're told that elementary starts at 10:30 and the last lunch will be at 1:30 or 2 o'clock.
That's, that timing is going to be determined by the number of students who are actually
So
in person.
that's the framework, 10:30 to 2, to 1:30.
It's on a campus.
Again,
It's on campus.
It's going to be on a campus
Like what we're saying,
level.
if you've got one campus that's at 25% in person and another that's at 75,
Every campus.
it's going to look different.
Okay.
So what we've done is we've given guidance to the campuses to how to set their cafeteria up at 50% of regular capacity. Then they structure their day accordingly, and if they cannot manage all of those students in at 50% during the lunch periods, they would either add areas to eat or they would add additional lunch periods. So we're giving them the flexibility to work
I just think,
depending on
you know,
that.
if they have to be there at 7 or 7:30, well, in the morning, and then at 10:30 eating lunch, or even 11 o'clock, I'm
Oh,
just
that's what
going.
they do in elementary?
Some of them it's brunch.
I know they do that at early release, but
That's
every
what
day.
we do in elementary.
Every day.
But those lunch periods will be spread throughout the day. We also feel very comfortable. Monica's team has done a tremendous job of getting ready for this. The way that the lunches will be structured and how quickly, with efficient disinfecting we can do between lunches, will assist those campuses in being able to move their students through and get lunches. Everything from that to, the other thing to clarify is that when we use the phrase grab and go for food, that's how it's packaged. They're, just so that they can move through the line quickly, social distance efficiently, but those will still be hot meals.
Okay.
So I want to clarify that as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just had one more question for the buses. How are we looking? Okay. And then we need to get some eyes or didn't know if he's having nightmares of how to move the kids.
That's all I have this time of year. I'm sorry, I heard buses out there, but I didn't
Well,
hear the
I guess
question.
my question is, because I've had some parents contact me, are some of the schools going to have staggered bringing them in, or do we have enough buses to get enough the kids that are going to each school to school?
It depends on the campus, but I think that we're going to be good with the number of routes that we have with the number of students. But that was a big concern going into it when we started looking at reducing the capacity on the buses. But I think with the numbers that we have now, I think we're going to be good. We'll have little spots here and there where we have to make some adjustments, but we're going to be good starting out.
Okay. I didn't know if dismissal, if all kids would be able to go home at the same time, or are we going to have a later buses so that?
And that's possible in cases. Right now, it looks like that's probably going to be more dependent on drivers than buses.
Okay.
We've got the route set up, and I think that we're going to be good on the capacity of the buses, but we may have some instances where we have to do some of those comeback routes just based on drivers.
Too many moving parts, right?
There's a lot of moving parts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Rockwood, may I ask you just a couple more questions? So this first one is just a hypothetical. I wanted you to just kind of walk me through the process. So say there's a student, this afternoon, he talks to his teacher, he says, you know, I couldn't taste my lunch, I can't smell, I have a cough, has symptoms, goes to the nurse, no fever. Will that student be asked, because that student has some of the symptoms of COVID-19, asked to go home or asked to be quarantined?
We'll let our quarantine expert, Dr. Bowen.
So it's really going to depend. We're going to look at those on a case-by-case basis. Mark Robach, the lead nurse, and I were chatting a little bit about that today. I think the key is that we have to look at, were they exposed to somebody? Was there a known exposure? If so, that certainly increases the odds, and then you act accordingly. Is this a common issue with this particular child? Is it something that we've seen before? So we have to be mindful that children will still get sick, and children will get sick, and it will not be COVID. And we don't want to move too aggressively in a situation to assume that it's something it's not. So we're going to look at each of those on a case-by-case basis, and when appropriate, we may suggest to the parent, you may want to visit with your family doctor if that's appropriate, but we're going to look at each one on a case-by-case basis.
But say that child has most of the symptoms, maybe not fever, but has most of the symptoms, and we recommend that you go to the doctor. Does the district or does the nurse have the authority to say, you need to enter the quarantine protocol, or you need to go and get the test?
So, sort of. The answer is sort of. If we believe that the child is presenting with multiple symptoms, had a known exposure, and the parent is saying, I'm not taking my child to get tested, we can actually quarantine that child, yes. We can say, you need to meet the criteria for returning. 24 hours, and these are the CDC/TEA guidelines, 24 hours fever-free without fever-reducing medicine, 10 days since the onset of symptoms. I'm missing the third one. The quarantine queen just forgot the third one. 10 days, at least, 10 days, yeah, since the onset of symptoms. So.
But it would necessarily require the district, the nurse, having knowledge of an exposure?
We do ask that. We can ask that question of the child. Yes, we have some. She's designed some flow charts for her nurses to use to have conversations, which are similar to the flow charts we use when we visit with staff.
But let's say that student has many of the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Parents say, no, my kid's coming back to school tomorrow, and the parent's not divulging any information about whether there was a close contact.
Right.
Does the nurse have the authority to say, you have enough symptoms, I'm not comfortable with you returning to school unless it's 14 days or a negative test?
I would say the answer to that is yes, much as they do if a child comes to school with any other communicable disease or with fever. We send kids home. If they've got fever, we say you need to go home until you're 24 hours without
But what
medicine,
if they don't have
fever-free.
fever? They may not have fever.
They may not have fever, that is correct.
think that those, just from talking with teachers and nurses in the district, that maybe could be clarified a little bit more, because from what I've heard, some of the teachers are under the impression that maybe the nurses have a little bit more limited authority than they actually do. And I think that we should be more cautious, especially in elementary, where the students aren't going to be required to be wearing masks, and if they're coughing and they've got multiple symptoms, I think that we need to be a little bit more clear that if you've got the symptoms, the nurse has the authority to say that you've got to either quarantine or go get a test.
Again, I want to say we need to be very careful with that, because children are going to get sick with non-COVID issues, and we want to be very careful on how we treat our kids. I think that's when it really becomes a collaborative effort between the school and the parents. And I can speak from experience, Mr. Hunt. We've done this all summer with athletes and staff. We have not encountered one uncooperative individual, not one. And if people are more willing to be cooperative because they do understand the ramification. We have been, our experience has been good.
Very good.
Well, and I do know that kids will have allergies, and if a parent wants to say that, I think they need to require a note or something from a physician saying, I'm treating this child for allergies, because a lot of allergy symptoms are also COVID symptoms.
Correct.
And I think that's just more of the communication of, if that's what it is, could you please bring us a note from your physician? And I don't think that's something a nurse could not ask.
Right, correct, that's not unusual.
I don't know how to bring this up or not, because between Facebook and I've read this somewhere, can't say that it was from this district or not, which I'm pretty sure it wasn't, where it was a letter sent to the parents to encourage them to explain to their children to not just go to a nurse because their stomach hurts, or that they feel anxious, or they were upset in their classrooms. And I hope that's not being done. It shouldn't be. I can't see the parents being told to encourage them not to go to the nurse. These first few weeks, they're going to have anxiety. They're going to have stomach problems. They're just going to need that reassurance. So I'm hoping that if any parents read that, or Facebook, or wherever they saw it, because I read it, that we let the parents say, tell them if they feel bad, they should go to the nurse. And for the first few weeks, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out which one.
Frequent flyers.
Yeah, you'll figure out which ones get anxious.
One of the things that I would encourage parents, teachers, anyone, before you go to Facebook to determine what the rules are, touch base with us. And then we can at least assist with that, because there are a lot of different districts are doing different things. And you start getting them mixed up over time.
There you go.
And we are ready to answer any questions that come along.
And that's why I said I hesitated, but knowing parents are listening, is, if they saw it, don't go to your child and say, don't go to the nurse. Encourage them that if they do feel bad, they do have the right to go. That's what was bothering me, because.
And let me ask, just clarifying. So if a teacher, there's been a lot of pushback from teachers, both ways. Some of them really want to go back in the classroom, and many of them don't. So if they have questions, the best place for them to go is the head principal on their campus. Is that correct?
To start with, that's correct.
And if they're not satisfied, or they think that they're being dismissed a little bit, how can they?
Yeah, where do they go then?
Where do those kind of teachers go to get the reassurance that they need? Is there a process in place to appeal to?
It depends on the question. If it is a personal question about accommodations and those types of things, they go to HR. If it is the logistics within the school, then they go to their assistant superintendent, and then ultimately to the chief academic officer.
I want to say, it's going to work out. I know it will. We've done it for so long, and I have all the confidence in the world that y'all are, it's going to be good. So I'll just leave it at that.
Not necessarily a question, but a comment. I do appreciate all the work that y'all are doing. I know that you guys have been working very long hours and putting in a lot of effort and collaboration, and I certainly appreciate appreciate it, and I know that parents appreciate it, and I know the students will appreciate it, and that extends all the way down to teachers and staff too. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, if that is it, everyone good? Okay. It is 9:39, and we're adjourning to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Codes 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney.
You got it. Tap your gavel again.
Oh.
Have fun with that.
Okay. Do I have to hit the thing?
No, you just start.
Okay.
Just hit it at the end.
Okay. We're now back in open session. It is 10:12 p.m. and we have a quorum. Are there any motions to be made? No. Let's see, are there any future agenda items? Nope. Are there any upcoming meetings or events?
First day of school.
First day of school, that's probably about it.
In person and virtual.
That's
We have
right.
that graduation.
Oh.
Graduation's
Summer
next
grad-
Thursday.
Summer grad.
At
Summer graduation.
Summer graduation.
Yep.
That's what this thing is here behind me.
Okay, if that is it, then the meeting is adjourned and it is 10:12.
Thank